Hi there. This is a re-recording, or I guess a recording of our session in Boston, the Bringing Purpose to Life session, in which we got together as a group and we explored some of the ideas that relate to what purpose is, and did some work together as an series of exercises to understand how we can use purpose or the idea of purpose more effectively in our organization. So just re-recording this for those of you who want to relive the magic, or a few of you who actually kind of came in halfway through or missed some of the session and wanted to catch up. So enjoy. Thank you. So yeah, a little bit about Habanero. We've been around for almost 30 years now, quite close to 30 years. We've been in the employee experience space that whole time. And I guess for maybe a little more than the last 10 or 12 years, we've been working quite a bit helping different organizations work on organizational purpose, discovering their purpose and bringing it to life. And I guess one thing I've really noticed in the last while is how much the idea of purpose has changed since the lockdown. And in fact, our whole relationship with work has changed pretty significantly. And what we're finding is, what the research is finding is, across all the demographics, people are looking for more purpose in their role now. They're looking for their organization they work for to make a positive impact in the world in a way that's meaningful to them. They're looking for the individual experiences that bring them more meaning, and a broader connection to the people around them, and to the world in general. So the employee world of employees is on an increasing trend to want to be connected more from a purpose point of view. And yet, we're finding, and maybe this is a cause of an effect of that, we're finding that people are less connected to their organizations from purpose point of view. They're sort of more disillusioned. So this is from a recent Gallup survey that showed that people's connection to the sense of purpose in their organization has actually gone down in the last short while. So we have this widening gap between what people are looking for, what their expectation is, what they think will fuel their lives more effectively, and what they'll make employment decisions about, and how organizations are standing up and supporting that idea of bringing purpose to life with their employee experience. So it's an interesting concept. So our goals for today are to get on a common ground in terms of the language of purpose, what it means, and build a shared understanding of how that connects to organizational performance. I wanted to just get clear about what it takes to bring purpose to life in an organization. So we've defined it. Now, what does it actually take for an organization and the people in it to really get value out of the idea of purpose? And then finally, we set this up in a way that the participants in the workshop could do some work on their own, and then work in small groups and share back in the room, and just get some ideas going specific to their organization. Like, what can we do at our organization to start to make an impact on this and improve our performance around purpose? So before I get going into that idea, I find this really important to ground people on a shared understanding of the common pillars of a culture. We have purpose. We're talking about that today. So that's that reason for being, the North Star you're heading towards that you never quite reach, but it's always motivating to you. I also like to think about it as an expression of the full potential of an organization, and we'll talk a bit more about all these things after this slide. But the other common term that or idea that people have in an organization is values. If purpose is really motivating, values are really guiding. Values are these ideas that are forged through the really difficult times and the really powerful times in an organization, and they're really just a set of rules that are pretty simple and guiding for people to know how to stay in the right side of issues that are quite important and fundamental to the organization. So purpose is motivating, values are guiding, and then we have this idea of vision. And vision is the future we are deciding to create as an organization. And we love the idea that vision can be inspired by purpose, because if purpose is an expression of our potential as an organization, and we get up every day, every week, every month, and we work really hard on bringing that purpose to life, where are we in 10 years or in 15 years? So vision helps purpose because it adds tangibility to the idea of purpose, and purpose helps vision because it adds emotional resonance to the idea of vision. So they work really well together as well. And then there's another component that comes up sometimes, mission. Sometimes organizations kind of use mission and purpose synonymously, but strictly speaking, mission is a little more short-term oriented. It's a little bit more tactical. It brings in the people you serve or your customers into the conversation. And I like how Jim Collins puts this all together. If purpose is that North Star you're heading towards, it's always motivating, inspiring you, and values help you understand where the boundaries of the road are so you don't go off the road and you know it's bad to go off the road. And your vision, and you're, on your way to that North Star, you need to get over this massive mountain range and into the next valley. That's your, your next 10, 15 years of activity. That's your vision. Your vision is to be in that next valley between the next two mountains. And if that's the case, then your mission is really, maybe this that next plateau we can see on the horizon where, and after that we're going to ascend up the top of the mountain. So it's a little more short term, a little bit more tactical, and a little more guiding in those ways. And you can use these terms any way you want. There's not any international adjudicating standards body that's going to fine you for using the words incorrectly. But what's really important in all this is two things. One is, less is more. Having a whole bunch of ideas can be confusing for people. You need to think about the usability of things. But the most critical idea is that these have to be felt to be true, and they have to be connected to what other people see and feel in the organization. So this is the idea of coherence. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But if these ideas don't add up for people, or if they conflict with each other, which is really negative, organizations can run into problems. Okay, so those are the common pillars of the meaning-making ecosystem or a culture. What do we mean by purpose? And purpose as a concept has been highly studied in lots of forms of social science, going right back actually to the end of World War II with Viktor Frankl and his experiences in concentration camps in Germany. And it's been studied in all sorts of contexts. There's a lot to say about the research on it. But I maintain that the idea of purpose is quite intuitive. And I like to think about it more, people seem to connect with the idea and understand it better. Just think about it from their personal experiences. And if you think back in your life, and maybe even with a little more emphasis of thinking back when you're younger, and you think about moments in your life when you were working on something that was really meaningful to you. It doesn't need to be meaningful to anyone else in the world, but if it's meaningful to you, it matters to you, and you're working on that in a way that brings your special gifts to life, that really fires up the things you're amazing at. So when you're doing something that matters to you in a way that brings your gifts to life, that's a moment when you're living your personal purpose. And if you think back to experiencing that in different times in your life, there's almost like a feeling you get in your body. Like it really feels like you're doing, you're really performing at a high level. It really feels great. So there's a kinesthetic component to this too, just which helps people notice when they're in that mode. But when you're in that mode, first of all, the one thing to mention is it's a temporal thing, right? Like you don't understand these ideas and then live in your personal purpose for forever and ever. It's actually just understanding at different points in your life the ingredients that combine together to help you be in that mode. So the more you understand that, the more you can engineer your life circumstances to live in that personal purpose moment. When you're in that moment, though, you're performing at your highest, and I don't mean just task completion. I mean also finding more meaning in what you're doing. And because it's so true to who you are, you're essentially, being more authentic to who you are. And that has an impact on the relationships you have with the people around you and the connections you make. And so it really is this catalytic moment where you're creating tons of value for you and for other people. And it feels amazing. Okay, so that's purpose at an individual level. Well, how do we scale that out to an organization? So surely, if we have an organization and we're helping everyone in the organization really understand what it takes for them to live their personal purpose, and they're engineering the circumstances in their work world to bring that to life, that's surely a good thing, and it absolutely is. But we don't necessarily think of that as purpose driven. There's another couple of elements to this that really get us to that amazing space of becoming a purpose driven organization. So what it actually looks like is an organization doing the very hard work in some cases to understand what the ideas are that are most resonant through all the hearts and minds of the organization. Really finding that that common harmonic frequency, that really motivates people the most, and animates people and gets them the most excited. And giving voice to that and being able to articulate it in a way that's authentic and understandable and usable in the organization to motivate people and guide culture. And so that's one thing they've done. But the other thing they've done that's quite interesting is they've created the environment working with individuals in the organization so those individuals can optimize the opportunity to find the overlap between their personal purpose and the organizational purpose. So here we have this one clear and central idea that's very motivating, and we're putting people in a position to work in ways that they work best, connected to what matters to them, and in ways that brings their special strengths to life. So this is what we call a purpose-driven organization. It's when that central idea is well articulated and the organization works to align all the behaviors and motivate performance around that idea. And when we're in that mode, we find that the personal good and the collective good, they start to merge and become one. And so it's this really powerful, high performance moment in an organization. It's performing well from an organizational point of view. It's performing well from, creating value for customers, and it's performing well for people in your organization in terms of them leading fulfilling lives and having amazing career experiences. So this is what we call purpose driven. So as a group, what we did next is we did some work in the workbook. We focused on particularly, I'm sure I've given you the workbook or you have a copy of it, but box 2 is where I really wanted people to focus. Like, what are those core themes in your organization where that really define that purpose idea? If you talked about, what really captures people's hearts is this idea and maybe this idea and how they come together. That's what I wanted people to really think about in particular. So, but those 4 exercises are all really good to take a look at. So we spent some time working through those and talking about them. The next thing we talked about is just thinking about purpose as it relates to performance. And most organizations, actually, if you go back to the whole concept of organizational development that came out of the Industrial Revolution, they were bringing people in, craftspeople who worked individually, and bringing people from farmers' fields. And the whole idea was we can actually combine people and systems and machinery together and increase the output and productivity. And let's say we were manufacturing, pins, stick pins for sewing or something like that. The idea is that we understand the manufacturing process. We break it down all the little steps so they're small enough so either a human being or a machine can do that step. And then we build a management structure around that, and that's how you get organizational structure, the division of labor, all these ideas and processes, all these ideas that we understand in work today really, came out of the Industrial Revolution. And what's interesting about that is it tends to focus individuals on the areas of work that they need to master to be successful. And so you tend to get a lot of people pointing in a lot of different directions. My focus is on the head of the pin. My focus is on putting collections of pins in boxes and shipping them. So people focus in their area. Their performance is really locally centered, on their task. And it's very difficult for human beings to raise their gaze and see the big picture and really understand, that they're doing something significant and collectively. And so energy flows in a lot of different directions, and it gets this really diffuse environment. You end up with this diffuse environment. What's interesting, if you look at organizations that have a clear sense of purpose, which could be a not-for-profit or a for-profit organization, but it shows up a lot in the not-for-profit space. And as an example, we do a lot of work with this amazing organization called the Dr. Peter Center. And they deal with people right on the fringe of society who are dealing with incredibly complex social and healthcare issues. And so when you walk into that organization, you see the people you're helping, and it's so clear, what we're doing here. It's impossible to be confused and not understand at some level that we're contributing to something very important that really impacts people's lives. And so in organizations like that, you just naturally get this sort of coalescing of the creativity and energy and focus into kind of one stream. And so you see this performance gain in terms of connecting people with the work that they're doing. But even in an organization like the Dr. Peter Center, where it's quite evident what they're doing and what they're focused on, when they started doing the work to really understand and get clear and articulate about their purpose, and then creating the environment where people could live into it. We see an even bigger collection of all that energy and creativity in one direction, and that has a significant impact on performance. It's a real driver of organizational performance and individual performance because things are so lined up, and because there's a real sense of connection around pulling in one direction. So, I mean, this isn't just about alignment of task, it's about something much bigger where people are really connected at an internal and motivational level. And so we see in organizations, that diffuse organization where people are pointing in a lot of directions, people show up for their job for a lot of different reasons. It's not just as crass as I'm just here for my paycheck. It might be, I like the task, the commute is nice, I like the team I work with, but they really don't have this sense of being part of something big and meaningful, and that has an impact on performance. But the organizations that are more purposeful, just intuitively purposeful, yes, people are there. They're inspired to be there for a reason. They'll stick around through harder times. They'll put in more discretional effort in the work that they do. They'll talk to more people outside their organization more favorably about it. They're more proud of their job, and it's motivating for them, and that has an impact on performance. But when the organization, any organization, regardless if it's inherently purposeful or not, when they do the work to define their purpose, and every organization can do this work, it's not just for not-for-profits or inherently purposeful organizations. Every organization has the opportunity to really get clear about their purpose. Then people start to think, oh, I'm actually start part of something much bigger. And that is a deeply human thing. When people, we as humans, desire to be connected to something bigger than us, something that matters in the world. That's a deeply human thing. And so when people start to feel that, they really have this deeper sense of meaning in the work they do. It really motivates them. It drives them. It drives them to work collectively more effectively, and that has a big impact on performance. But the real amazing overdrive next gear is when we start to take an organization with that clearly defined purpose, and we do the work to help people connect what they care about at a personal level. And so there, I love this idea that more and more people in the organization thinking, yeah, I can bring our purpose to life every day in what I do, and it's meaningful for me and it's meaningful for the organization, and that is so powerful. That's when people are really rocking it. They're really doing their best work and creating strong relationships and making a real impact in the world. And there's a commensurate increase in performance for that. So we see this as a little bit of a almost like a purpose-driven maturity model for organizations, and it's a way to assess where you're at. And to be clear, it's not about defining this your purpose-driven thing and you're locked in. You'll be on the right-hand side of this for the rest of time. It's like building a muscle and a capability. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And so we talked about this idea of cohesion. Cohesion, I believe purpose is the most powerful driver of business performance. But cohesion is the antidote. A lack of cohesion or dissonance is the antidote to the power of purpose. And when people can't see a connection between the things, or they don't think the ideas are authentic, it really breaks down their experience. So, if you're an employee, you're looking into the organization and you're not sure why everyone's there or where the organization's going, or it's confusing what the CEO just said, or it doesn't make sense to them, or it doesn't add up, or doesn't seem authentic, or you see things happening and you feel that we've talked about this as a value, but why is that acceptable? That doesn't make sense to me. Or the decisions are confusing for people, or strategy doesn't add up. Like I feel like we say we're about this, but why are we making decisions like this? Those things really have an impact on this idea of cohesion. And when cohesion is broken, it really is very distracting for people, at best. But your most engaged employees, the one that care the most, the ones that are most emotionally invested in the success of your company, they're the ones that are hurt the most by this feeling of dissonance. They're the ones that where the lack of cohesion really distracts them the most, which can be really damaging to performance in the organization. So we as a group did some work on the performance dimensions and opportunities for cohesion. Had some great conversations about that. And the last section we went into is just thinking about bringing your purpose to life. We've defined what it is. We've defined how it makes an impact on performance. And so, what are the things you need to think about in terms of really being successful with purpose as an organization? The first thing I wanted to talk about is that, I mentioned this before. It being purpose driven is almost more like nurturing a garden or building nurturing an ecosystem or building a muscle. And so we call these things adaptive problems, and there's technical problems in the world and adaptive problems. And technical problems are characterized by a problem that has a clear solution. It can be solved, where adaptive problems always require probe, sense, respond in this learning motion to continually move forward. And so the expectations for technical problems are that we spotted a problem, we fixed it, it's done. That thinking doesn't work for culture in the culture domain in general, but definitely doesn't work in the culture domain in terms of being purpose driven. You really need to focus on making progress and moving forward and integrating that as an ongoing muscle in your organization. And it really requires leaders in particular to be curious and open. And it's not sort of, we brought in an expert and they told us this is our purpose and we just accepted it and we went forward. So this idea is important. I don't want to belabor it though, but becoming purpose driven is a lot like building a muscle. And less like fixing something that's broken in your organization. Actually, it's not at all like fixing something that's broken in your organization. We find actually that we have to do a lot of work with leaders to help them. They intellectually get that, but they have a lot of habits about going back to the break fix idea, our way of thinking, our way of seeing things, and so there's a lot of work to be done with leaders to get them into this mode. Okay, so if our beautiful purpose-driven organization is like the most amazing cake. I love cake. Who doesn't love cake? And so what does it take to make this incredible cake? Well, for starters, you need to do the work I mentioned before to really unearth what matters in your organization. We think of purpose design work as 90% archaeology and 10% design. Like so much of the work is actually getting into the organization and understanding what's going on in the hearts and minds of people. And we do this by putting people in a bubble of psychological safety and doing what's called empathetic research. It's more of a grounded theory research approach that allows you to surface the themes of what matters to people. So you can't go into your organization and say, what's our purpose? People don't think about the organization that way. The objective is to observe how they respond to things and use that process to really extract the themes of what resonates in people's hearts and minds. And I could talk more about that, but the idea here is we pull out these themes of the purpose, and we also tend to pull out themes of the values to validate those as well. We can turn those themes into whatever artifacts we want to build. Are we building a purpose statement or a story or some kind of other artifact? Generally, it comes down to a statement and some descriptions and some other elements, but it helps to refine that whole pillars of the culture system, with values and vision, and get those things clear and validate them and test them and make sure the words are correct and make sure there isn't anything in there that's going to catch people off guard or allow people to weaponize the ideas or et cetera, right? So there's a bunch of testing and refining that's quite critical in that. And then finally, we have this idea. We're going to bring it to light. There's life. There's some form of launching it into the organization. Some organizations do it subtly. Some organizations have massive, offsite or celebration. There's lots of ways to give it life. But once it's kind of out and activated and people know it, there's still a lot of work to do over time to build that muscle. So you're continually living in that sort of right end of the maturity cycle. And so we think of these things as layers in this beautiful layer cake. So we're going to go through them now. First of all, there's leadership and governance. Governance is really important. The idea of purpose is that it should live the life of an organization. And you might, over time, learn more about it and get more articulate about it and refine the words and how you describe it. But the idea of the purpose isn't something that should change with the leader or the board chair or the market. And so in some organizations, we do quite a bit of work of embedding the idea of purpose. So if the board chair changes, the whole board changes, ownership changes, the CEO changes, leadership changes. That idea of purpose is embedded in the organization, and every new round of actors that come into the organization, they are, engaged in bringing that purpose to life. So there's work to do there for organizations. It is unbelievably heartbreaking for an organization to wind up the idea of a purpose and really get behind it, and have a new CEO come in and decide, no, that's not what we're about, and flip it into something else. I've seen that happen. It's a great way to just crush people's souls. Leadership. Speaking of leaders, leaders tend to require some work. Actually, even if they're the most empathetic, wonderful leaders, they have this new tool in their toolkit, the purpose, and probably refined values. And the art of being able to go into the organization and use their specific purpose in ways that help people make sense of the bumps and grinds and decisions and actions in the organization as a mechanism for really helping people internalize the purpose and understand it. That's a new leadership skill that leaders often have to learn. It's something to figure out. The next layer of our layer cake, which is looking more and more delicious all the time, is vision and strategy. We talked about vision earlier, like if your purpose is that expression of the full potential of an organization, it's connected to vision in that way. Strategies are really important as well. If the definition of strategy is a set of coordinated decisions of what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, and those coordinated decisions work together to convince a client to spend money on you, or a member to join, or whatever your business model is, then purpose isn't necessarily specifically brought up in your strategy. It isn't necessarily brought up explicitly in the decisions of your strategy, but it creates this bias. And if you really hold that purpose in your heart and you really think it's the expression of your full potential, you'll be making strategy decisions that make it clear how you're bringing your purpose to life. So that bias in strategy making is a really critical element of how purpose shows up for people. And it will be transparent to the people in the organization when that happens. The employee experience, like all those moments that matter from people's journey through your working in your organization, being associated with it, hiring, onboarding, performance management, all those different things. There's opportunity for all those to make them better, more effective, just a deeper, more effective experience for people by thinking about how you bring the purpose to life in each of those. And generally what happens actually is an organization gets clear about their purpose, and then they can sort of look at those moments that matter, and they're like, okay, so I can see actually our performance management system pulls us farther away. It's going to create the most dissonance. Let's fix that first. So you can almost create a bit of a backlog of opportunities to look at those moments that matter and find out how you can get more value out of them, make them more effective, more powerful by bringing in the idea of your purpose into design and refinement of those. Behaviors and beliefs. This is where the rubber hits the road. Your culture is a product of the beliefs and the behaviors it drives, and those drive all the experiences that everyone has in the organization. So the goal over time is to allow the idea of your purpose, through actions and all the other interventions we do in organizations, to allow that idea of purpose to start to build a new belief system in the organization, or enhance the belief system that's there to make it more and more oriented around the idea of your purpose. And so that's really the money in this. Like there's no such thing as sustainable culture change without actually changing the belief system at the bottom of the culture iceberg. This is another conversation, happy to have it, but this is essentially how culture works. So the most important thing in all of this is that, or I guess the most important measure, is that the belief system over time is shaping and evolving to be connected to the idea of purpose. So people really believe it, they understand it. That drives their behaviors, that drives all the action, and that's where the value ultimately comes from. And then finally, we find when organizations get clear about this purpose, it's this new level of authenticity and understanding who they are, and that is dynamite when you're getting outside of your organization and dealing with your clients, your customers, or the people you serve. And so this idea that we have just put all this work into getting much clearer about who we are, that allows organizations to be more authentic in the world. And being authentic is super sexy, and it's a great opportunity for refining the brand, refining the client experience, and getting more aligned, inside and outside your organization around that central idea. And so that there's a lot of powerful opportunities in that as well. So that's a lot. It's a massive dump. I hope you're doing okay listening to this. We gave people some time to work on those things and talked about them. That's the last page of the workbook. Yeah, and we had some great thinking and ideas that came out of all that. So I hope this wasn't too much of a fire hose for you, and it's helpful. If you have any questions or want to dig into any of the elements like the research or how culture works or any of these other things, I'm always available to talk about it. It's my favorite subject. Just reach out and give me a shout. And good luck and take care. Bye.